Welcome to our program today, Thoughts of Artists. We have a very wonderful guest with us today, Mr. Philippe Maucotel, who is one of our local people. He lives in Cutchogue, and he's been doing some wonderful things up on his property and in his studio. Some of you may have seen his work as you drive by. And he's going to tell you some of the things that are there. And then later in the show, we're going to go up there and visit and see exactly what's on his lawn and what's in his studio. But first, we're going to introduce you to Mr. Maucotel and find out a little bit about him first, and then later we'll go up to his place of art. Welcome to the program, Mr. Maucotel. Philippe, you live in Cutchogue. If people drove by your house, what would they see on the lawn?
Well, the CSs.
Very good. Everybody's been by your property, right?
Yes,
so we know exactly where
yes,
you are.
Been
right?
by too.
Yes, I have indeed, right. Your use of letters and words is fascinating. And in the film, we'll see that you are a punster, that you use puns to use your letters and so forth. And it's extremely interesting because you are native of
France.
France, right. So if you can make puns in 2 languages, that's great. Whereabouts in France are you
Near
from?
Paris.
Near Paris, yes. You consider yourself a Parisian? Is it that near?
No, I don't. I don't consider myself anything, to tell you the truth. What's nice about having double nationality is that you don't have any.
Oh, that's an interesting observation, yes. How long have you been in our country?
30 years.
30 years. Ah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's sort of an anniversary.
In and out, but basically 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you, did you study in this country or
No,
study in Paris? In France?
In Paris, yeah.
Very good. What kind of schooling did you have for
literature? Literature. I've never been to an art school.
An art school. Oh,
the only
all right.
thing near an art school I've been to is a beauty school to get haircuts.
To get a haircut. Well, that's good.
Brooklyn,
Very good. You can't quit with the puns, can you? You just do it all the time.
All these girls are trying to cut it in life, you know. So
yes.
that's my only education in art. Is,
that's wonderful. So literature is really your
yes,
basic interest, and you've used it so well.
Yeah, it still is.
Yeah. Some of your work that we will see is in wood.
Yeah.
Some is in
concrete, metal, fiberglass. But basically, the 3 main materials I use are wood, concrete, and metal.
Right. Whichever, if you're going to put it outdoors.
Yeah, the material in itself, it's very often irrelevant to except if it really part of the pun. You see, when you, as I was saying before, you know, when you see trees, obviously it'd be silly to make trees in concrete. So as an example, but most of it, or a piece like semantics, for example, the pun calls for cement, you know. So
that's cement. Great. I love that. So with I understand with wood, it could be outdoors or it could be indoors. So you don't have to concern yourself with whether it's outdoors.
Wood,
or
no, I use plywood a lot. You see, because it lends itself. Any kind of wood, for one thing, you cannot get them in any dimension, any thickness, and they would break. It's very brittle. You see, so I use plywood because it lends itself to what I do. It's the most awful of wood.
Yes,
you know.
Right.
There's no majesty about plywood.
Not a whole bunch,
it's
right?
An awful material, basically.
But with it, they say they just paste junk pieces together, but for your purposes, it works very well.
It does, and it sort of gives it. I give plywood back to trees. You know, I transform it into trees sometimes.
Oh, that's very good.
So that helps.
Give it back to the woods,
yes,
right. There you go. The wood things, you can paint them and you can cover that wood so that it doesn't look wooden.
Yeah, very often I finish it so you can tell, in fact, what it is. It could be could be plastic, could be anything. Yeah. So very often, you see, it doesn't really matter what I use, and I'm not particularly interested in material in a traditional sense. You know, a sculpture work with and they love the material they use and the sense for it. As far as I'm concerned, I have very little love for the material I use.
It's just a vehicle to put your
I don't think any writer
into.
loves ink.
Yeah, good
you know,
point. Very good.
Or whether you
Very
might say
good.
some painters might have a sort of weakness for turpentine, you know.
Yeah, yeah, true.
But I
true.
never heard any writer getting high on ink, for
Right.
instance. So I feel the same way about concrete or any other
Use
material.
molds for the concrete.
Yes, I make molds out
Molds,
of basically out of wood or whatever, but basically wood, yeah, or could do it out of foam.
Okay.
You
Yeah, your film of your studio and so forth is fascinaning, but very often people like to see, how did you begin this? Where did you start? Did you come up with the pun, and then it backs up into
yeah, well,
doing it?
you see, I really never thought I'd be doing this. It grew, and it took me a long time to figure it out, although I think I'll never know exactly.
That's good.
When I was in Paris, many of my friends were visual artists, and in fact, most of them are very famous. And I grew up in their company, you know, and I spent many of my evenings and nights with them. For one thing, the openings were very nice. You had plenty of food and a lot to drink and women, you know. So that was really
social.
Yeah, very
For social
nice,
reasons, yes, right.
But I had nothing to do really myself with it except an interest in it and as a tourist. But it gave me an education.
Sure.
But at the end, they were sort of the avant-garde of the 60s or early 70s. So I started my art education through them by the very end of it, you see.
Do you remember the first pun that you illustrated?
The first things I did, in fact, were take after a number of artists whom I knew personally. I used to call that sort of mimo-critique, you know, which is sort of a mime, or sort of an affectionate criticism of French. And those were the early puns on their work, you know.
Oh, very
yeah,
good. And then
yeah.
you decided that, gee, that worked very well. And then pretty
Well,
soon
I don't know. It
own.
started to take more and more of my time. And I had a house in Brownstone in Brooklyn, you know, which I still do. And all of a sudden I didn't know what to do with it. You know, I never planned it. So I sort of started working in the house, in the cellar, and going deaf, in fact, in the cellar. You know. So I decided I had to do something. It kept growing, you see. It's like UNESCO play, you know.
Yes.
The character keeps growing out, it goes out of the window, and so. So that's what happened. I grew out of my window, I ended up in Cutchogue.
Right out of Brooklyn into Cutchogue,
Yeah,
right?
one end to the other of the island, more or less.
Good, great.
Yeah.
We will see some of those puns, for example. What's the one that we saw? Subculture? That the stones are sub, meaning under.
Yeah,
and right?
That's what I call myself.
That's what you call yourself?
Yeah, sub-sculpture.
Sub-sculpture. I can't even say it. Never mind, you've invented a new word.
Well, you heard about sub-sculpture. What is that? Sub-sculptor. By that I mean, I really refer to the, well, it's an effort to refer to the hidden meanings behind words, below words, or on top of words. And often you don't know yourself. I've discovered meanings. People visit, you know, and they say things which I never thought about myself. And in fact, I discover later on what things mean, you know. It takes a while.
Yes, very good. You never look up anybody's writing to illustrate anybody in particular?
No. I strictly begin from a word. I write it down, some idea which comes to mind, and then I go from there directly to the material, which is wood, basically, where I draw it, where I write it.
Right. You were mentioning it's your handwriting in most of these.
Yeah, that's my style. It's my handwriting. Yeah.
But it's written in English, and
it's written in English or French or German, you know, or sometimes even Hebrew, you know, whatever.
Oh, interesting. Other languages as well.
Whatever. Sometimes, yeah. Sure. I try not to try too much on what I'm not too familiar with. But.
Very good. Well, we're going to take a trip up to Cutchogue and see your studio now and see some of these wonderful illustrations of puns that you've done. So we'll be back, folks. Come with us to Cutchogue.
This is Cutchogue, known as Cutchogue, known as Sodom, like Sodom and Gomorrah. As you can see, the only thing left now are sod fields when there used to be wheat, corn, potatoes, now only sod. That's what I see every morning, empty fields of sod. However, there is more than meet the eyes, because as you probably know, sod in the Jewish mystic is the meaning beneath the surface. So the question I ask myself is, what are the meanings below all that surface? And that's where I start from. Okay, so this is where I wonder what's below the surface. This is what you may call my studio, the entrance to it. These pieces there are part of an installation of a number of S's, which I call them the frolicking matrix. S, as you will see later on, there are many S's around. I am not that I'm an S-man necessary, but this refers to what is known in contemporary physics as the scattering matrix XS. So they are frolicking there. You see them in various positions. Someone, it's like the 40 position or 50 or how many are there, I forget now. Oh, this, the dog here is really a leftover from a piece which I'd done years ago, which was Dogma. This is the, I put this up because I had this wonderful dog who just got killed just a few months ago, and he was so nice that I figured I should do something to protect him. So I put this sign here to warn people, and so he doesn't get hurt. But you see, I was not lucky about it. This is still life. Well, everybody knows what a still life is. Now, of course, if you have a French accent, still can be confused as steel, the metal steel, you know. So anyway, it's a sort of a reflection on still life, and a pun to some extent. More S's frolicking. You see. I hope you can read it. It's a nice piece in a way. You see, this is where you can ask people, did you see it? You know, did you like it? And it's been a big hit so far. Now, of course, as far as the meaning is concerned, I guess I'll let you figure it out. There are two hits. I showed this one, and so I had made another one on the other side of the building. So it's kind of nice now. I can say that I have two hits. In order to have two together, you see that they emerge as tits. So that's a nice feeling. We'll see the other one later on. They are very similar, although, as you very well know, a brass is never like the other. Oh, this is rust. That's what happens to all of us. Unfortunately, this rust is not rusted enough. It's a great piece, like in a way, like still life, because it improves as time goes on, somewhat like us, I guess. At this point, it's still a little too nice. I should have dumped it into the sea for a year, I guess, and get it out later on. But it'll get there, I'm sure. Oh, this is one bird. In fact, this is part of a piece. There's another one that we'll have to show you. The idea is two two birds with one cut. And we'll see the other one later. Although what you see now is one bird, we'll see the other bird. This is a rune. You can see it's a piece of science fiction. You move to the future, may as well do a rune, be ahead of your time. This is called the singularity of the plural, or the reverse, the plurality of the singular. As you know, it has been a problem since the pre-Socratic, the notion of what singularity, of difference, and of plurality. The most people think they are actually swans or white ducks, which is fine with me. Same idea, it also refers to the notion of scattering, matrix. The meaning really is obscure. The result, whatever people see, is what counts, really. It's always very difficult to explain what you mean. You can only tell by whether you get it across by the reaction or not. I'm generally only pleased when people are curious about it and wonder, what is this? What are all these S's? And I think that's enough if wondering is the beginning. Is. Oh yeah, what you see over there is is. Well, that's is. It's a reflection on being. Is. Next to is you have memento, which is memento mori. Remember, you'll have to die. This is in fact the tomb which I made for my dog after he got killed by a car. And when we come close to it, you see my dog, first piece of sculpture is there. On the other side, what you see is Mara's tomb. Mara, everybody has probably seen the David painting of the assassination of Marat by Charlotte Corday during the time of the French Revolution. Marat was one of the most murderous characters of that time, and he had put through the guillotine many of Charlotte Corday's friends, which were the Girondins. And so Charlotte Corday murdered him in his bath. So you have Marat there, as you see, dripping white blood, of course, because as you know, white was the color of the royalists, and although, of course, Charlotte was herself a revolutionary. In fact, what we have in, totally by accident, I must say, because Marat turned out to be Marat, although it was originally going to be a very different piece. In fact, it was going to be Extra Lala, which is a reference to the state of being there. And it came also after I had done a piece which was called Bits of X. These bits of X's were not very satisfying, and one friend of mine came by one day and he said, well, Jesus, this looks like the tomb of Louis XVI. And as you know, Louis XVI 100th anniversary of his death. In fact, 200, I should say, was last January 23rd. So I figure that will be a great thing. We'll have this to propose to the royalists in France and see whether they want to use it to commemorate the death of Louis XVI. Now, so it's, of course, a double-edged sword, double-edged piece, rather, more like the guillotine, actually. Obviously, I don't think I'm a royalist, but who knows, the poor sucker, you know, I don't, he don't think he deserved it. It was just a symbol. So this is the, what you see is the tomb in commemoration of the bicentennial of the death of Louis XVI, which is in Cutshore, which is somewhat eccentric. It should be in Paris, I guess. But they never answered my letters. This scrap is actually a scrap of, it's the scrap of rust, what was left over from the cutout of rust. I used it to commemorate the, I like to commemorate, I guess. After the destruction of my neighbor's outhouse, we put it there, and I thought it would be a perfect place for it. But then after a while, she was a little annoyed by the idea, and we have to remove it. So you see it here now. Scrap. Scrap, scrap. This, you ready?
Yep, ready.
This is a subsculpture. You see SUBSCULPTURE. As I was saying before, I'm trying to figure out what's below the surface of things. This is a reference to that. Also, I really don't consider myself a sculptor per se. I think I'm more like a scriptor. I write things, I scatter on the ground, on the walls, and so when people ask me what I do, well, I've said I'm a kind of sub-sculpture, you know. I've done a number of pieces like this, somewhat underground, like subscript and also subterfuge, subterfuge, which is a beautiful word.
We're back in the studio today after traveling all over Cutshore to see your wonderful sculptures over there, Philippe. We're going to go to inside your studio next time, but we have to roam around and see these wonderful cement things that you have. For example, all those lazy S's and so forth and so on. I would like you to tell me something about that sub-sculpture one that maybe people couldn't see it exactly, but how did that come about?
Well, the whole idea is on sub, so subterranean, below the surface,
right,
below the
subconscious.
surface. Yes.
Okay, right.
So in a way, like semantics, which is another piece, or concrete, which is another piece, this refers to the work as a whole. You know, I don't consider myself as a sculpture really, but as a sub-sculpture.
I love it.
So yes, so that piece refers to the meaning below the surface. You see, where I am is among sod farms. You see.
Sod farms.
Sod farms.
Very
and
good. Yes.
if you know what sod means in the Jewish mystique, it's the meaning below the surface, the Eden word, which really is the original word.
Oh, that's interesting.
The one we
sod,
may never hear. So I find I'm a sort of sodist.
Oh dear, you're
well, I mean, call myself.
You've got the next sculpture working.
I call the area the Sodom, you know, and it's a sort of look upon all this sod as decadence in a way, you know. But yeah, well, in fact, I did a piece recently to refer to this, which is also buried, which is sod, which refers to this.
Right.
Now, of course, people think it's a reference to the sod farm,
yes,
which it is.
Right, it's a double,
it's
yes.
a reference to the meaning below the surface.
So you put the letters below the surface,
yeah,
right?
That's right. So
are they whole letters, or did you?
They're whole
you
letters.
just the whole letters, and then you had to dig.
So I bury them, and So I did a series like this using the word, using sub as a prefix to the word. You know,
Oh,
subterfuge was another one, you know,
yes.
or for sod, you know, as a sort of perfect one.
Once you start, there's no end with sub.
Well, you could take every sub,
Right.
every sub in the dictionary, and start
right.
burying it. You
Yes,
see,
subterranean,
yeah,
right?
you
Oh,
could start,
absolutely.
yeah, you have to make choices. So that's the problem. I could use, we could go on from A to Z.
Yes, of
and
course.
the English dictionary is enormous, you know, compared to
Yes.
the French, for example. If you start adding them up,
It's interesting.
of the whole industry.
I teach English to
Mhm.
foreign-born, and very often they say, "Oh, just give me one meaning for the word.
Mhm.
Don't give me all this." And we've decided that the smaller the word, the more definitions it has.
That's probably true.
So therefore, if you
Yeah.
look into prefixes like sub, you go on forever.
Yeah.
You could make a series, and you'd have to buy
Yeah.
a sod farm next door, and go
Yeah.
on forever.
Yeah, and this is especially true. In a language like German, for example, where you make them up, you know, you add up, and you add a prefix, a suffix, and you build up new words, endless
Yes.
words like this by
Sure,
adding
sure.
to them. It's that construction block. Yeah, well, English is in that sense, in fact, it's somewhat more difficult because of all the possibilities that you have, which are very different from German because they are sort of unexpected, you know, they are not necessarily grammatical, they could be, you know, sound and
It's
so on.
true, right? Yeah.
So yeah, so basically the word is, a lot of it is based on that. Now the S's that you see outside is, people think they are swans or
Yes, from a distance.
or
Yes,
whatever, you
yes.
know. But in fact, they are a reference to it's a reference to the plurality of the singular, or the singularity of the plural.
Of the
whichever,
plural.
yeah.
Okay, the plurality
You
of
know.
the singular, or
Mhm.
the singular of the. Oh, it's a very interesting
You see,
concept.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's a basic concept, you see.
Yes.
See, you and I are both, you know, we are singular and we are plural.
Yes.
So
Yes,
this is the basic of everything. Basis of everything, in fact.
Yes.
It's also a reference to what they call the scattering matrix in physics. You know, says S is a very important letter, a very feminine letter. You know,
Oh, well, that's,
Yeah,
well, that's interesting.
yeah.
A feminine letter.
very feminine.
Ah.
You know the sewing machine Singer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They were, I think, the advertising people for Singer were very conscious of that.
Is that right? I
Oh,
never
the S has
considered that.
sort of voluptuous
Yeah,
look,
sensual. Yes.
like a pregnant
True.
woman.
Yes. Sure.
And when Singer came out with their first electric sewing machine, they had this S there and a pregnant woman who, you know, when it was mechanical, it was very dangerous. You could lose your child like this using the sewing machine through the motion. So they
Interesting, yes.
presented the new electric sewing machine as a fantastic discovery.
I hate to stop us, but you know, we're going to tell people that you're coming back again. We're going into your
Yeah.
studio and into the library where you have books,
All the classics.
the classics
All the
on all the
classics
shelves.
are there. Yeah.
You have some fascinating things in your studio and in your home. So the next time we come back, we're going to go inside the house and not be outside with the buried letters. We're going to go inside.
Mhm.
Okay? Anything special you want us to look for while we're there?
Oh, there are nothing special, you know.
Yeah? Your favorite maybe.
No, I don't have any favorites.
No favorites,
no.
You wouldn't feel bad if one of them broke or you couldn't ever see it again.
Oh, well, yes, sometimes you would feel that, but a word can be always rewritten, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
If you did it once, you can do it better the second time, as they say.
maybe better or
Yeah.
worse.
Or
but,
worse,
you
right?
know, you never know.
Philippe, thank you so much for coming today. We really have enjoyed it.